When US President Joe Biden calls Europe, Germany is certainly on the speed dial button. Just a few days ago, Olaf Scholz, the German Chancellor, was here in Washington, D.C. And with me now is the German Coordinator of Transatlantic Relations, Michael Link. Welcome, great to have you here. Can you give us an impression of how the coordination is taking place at a crucial moment in time, as in Ukraine we're seeing this battle surrounding the town of Bakhmut, which is not strategically important, but it's psychologically very important right now. So what is the coordination back and forth?
I mean, you could visibly see the coordination in form of the Chancellor's visit, even only for some hours, to really closely coordinate, and this behind closed doors, but also openly with the US administration. It happens all the time, but also to have it more frequently in person, it's very important.
Now, this Russian attack on Ukraine has shaped transatlantic relations over this past year. Can you just describe to us what kind of division of labor there seems to be? Because we've seen the German Foreign Minister, and your office is in the German Foreign Ministry, do the rounds amongst the nations in the global south, trying to get them all to vote ideally against Russia, at the very least to abstain. This succeeded last time around when the UN gathered. So where does Germany see its role there?
I think Germany's role can be even more so in the future, and we are working on that, to be convincing, to win over the fence sitters who right now are trying to keep themselves a little bit distant from this conflict. I can understand that a lot of leaders in Latin America, in Asia, in Africa don't want to be always asked, where do you stand on this war? But it's unavoidable to do it, because the consequences can be felt worldwide, in the economy, in diplomacy, in military terms. Look at Wagner's military involvement now, Russia's involvement in Africa, in many places right now. So I think here is Germany's role. Take these countries serious, identify their interests, take India, take South Africa, take others, and then try to find common ground with them, where we can say what Russia is doing is colonialism at its worst, in a way which is openly aggressing other countries, and that cannot be in the interest also of South Africa or India.
But there's also criticism from those countries that now that they are needed, all of a sudden the West, Europe, Germany is discovering them as partners. So what will Germany, Europe do to keep them on board and actually to demonstrate that they are genuine about new partnerships?
That's a fascinating question. We do a lot already with these questions. In the past, we did it with classical development aid, but development aid, it's not enough. You need to take these actors serious, to give them ownership in international relations. And that is why we try, for example, to work with India, South Africa, others, Nigeria, Brazil, also to identify forms of together reforming United Nations, to give them ownership in this process. It's not we Europeans go to you and tell you what you should do. No, it's listening. First of all, it's listening what they want, what are their interests. They want to have a prosperous future, they want to have industrial societies, developed societies, and we need to better understand what their interests are. If they feel we take them serious, then they will also open up for our view of of the urgency of a clear signal in the conflict with Russia, because behind all that, and here I see some movement in India, they pretty much understand that what is happening there in the end could play into the hands of a China, which is certainly a threat to many neighbors, including India.
The former German Chancellor Angela Merkel, she tried to avoid that question. What Europe, what Germany would have to do if it has to decide between the United States and China. So where is Germany there right now? How would it answer this question?
Well, we cannot avoid an answer on this, because whoever is in charge here in Washington, D.C., be it the Republicans, be it the Trump side, be it a more modest, let's say, tone like we hear it sometimes from other Republicans, or be it the Democrats, they will all ask us unanimously, where do you stand on China? And that is why we try with our China strategy, which is under development right now, to give a very clear signal that we want to have, in all areas of strategic cooperation, we need to be ready to stand on our own feet, but if possible, not only as Germany or Europe, but together with the United States of America.
I just briefly want to take us back into the Oval Office, where Joe Biden had this short conversation with Olaf Scholz, where the media was present, and he praised his strong leadership, also the military assistance that Germany is providing. Germany is the third largest provider of military and financial aid after the United States and Britain. What can we expect Germany to do in terms of shifts? Biden praised Scholz for the historic change also back home, so he clearly recognizes that this was a long way to go for Germany given its past. When it comes to more than those Leopard tanks going into Ukraine, there's talk about fighter jets also in the future. Is any of this being ruled out as all in the open?
It's a very clear signal from Germany that apart from now trying to help with Leopards and others, that we are also in the long term investing in military cooperation, trying to modernize what we do in armament, trying to have more cooperation also with other partners, with other countries in military cooperation. And I think that's a very important signal, which the Chancellor gave very clearly last week in the Bundestag.
Well, Olaf Scholz would also be the first one to point out that it's not just about money, that when it comes to the Europeans, it's about getting them to agree on a joint strategy, have less weapon systems, because that money is going into dozens of companies in the EU, so that needs to be consolidated. So where does Germany see itself there? Will it coordinate? Will it lead the way? Will it be the first to say, okay, we'll give up a chunk of the pie?
In some areas, we do it already, not giving up, but dividing capacities and sharing capacities, trying to build it together, as we do it with FCAS, the Future Combat Air System. Also something which I'd always try to explain here in Washington, D.C., because a lot of colleagues and friends here say, why don't you simply buy F-35s? I say, okay, you want us that we Europeans do more on the military level, so it should be also in your interest that we, together with the French, the Spanish, sometimes the Italians and others and the Dutch, really do it. And that means we also need to be able to develop our own military capacities, but not in dissociation with the US. That is why we do both. We develop something with the French and Spanish, but at the same time we buy F-35s. And the last step, which really is the missing element in it, we need also to reform our export guidelines for military goods, because if we are not ready to find a way how to bring it to the market, of course not selling it to dictatorships, but later selling it to other democracies in the world or to other partners where we together agree that it makes sense. If we are not able to do that, we will not be able to refinance all these investments.
Now we're more than midway into the Biden term here in the United States. You were in the room when Donald Trump gave his latest speech at CPAC, at the Conservative Convention here. Yes. What were the thoughts going through your head? Because Donald Trump actually openly on the stage again said if NATO countries don't pay up, he won't protect them.
We don't take sides as Germany for Republicans or Democrats. I can only say I really hope that all this talk, and that was very prominent in his 2-hour speech, all this talk about, again, election fraud and violation of stealing of votes and all this, which is clearly wrong, not only proven by US courts, but also by international observers and repeatedly proven wrong. I am very concerned to hear that that still resonates with so many voters, and apparently that is something he's gambling on. But we can only, as Germans, as Europeans, really hope that the integrity of the electoral system in the United States is something which can be, the trust in its integrity can be restored.
And you're on the record because you led the election observer group when Joe Biden was elected, and actually criticized Trump's role in that election campaign quite significantly. But I just want to get to the point that there is a wide recognition that Joe Biden never mind who's the next president, except if it's him, on the Democrat and the Republican side, it's not going to get better than that for the Europeans ever again, is it?
What is a fact is that the Biden administration is taking the European Union as an institution more serious than any other previous administration. We don't interfere in the next election. We don't take sides in the next election. But what we can say are what is the fact today. And the fact today is that the Biden administration is doing indeed something which is extremely important for the cooperation between the European Union and the US, understanding that the European Union is an institution at its own and something which is being taken very serious. Therefore, the visit of Commission President von der Leyen here in Washington, D.C., I think in the end of the next days,
yes.
on Friday, is another signal that this administration takes European Union very serious. But that's not the reason to say thank you. But that's a reason to say finally that we are able to speak up as Europeans together, and we should use that opportunity, because this open door really to be listened to be heard when we have come with good arguments here. This should be used.
But a key reason she's also here is the Inflation Reduction Act by Joe Biden, and there was a bit of a mishap in that sense, in that it left out European companies from fundamental subsidies. Now the overarching concern actually on the European side is that there will be a competition for subsidies, which could become very costly, particularly for the European side. Yeah. So, what's your expectation? Can this be resolved by von der Leyen's visit, for instance?
I'm pretty sure there will be a better understanding. Maybe we need to come to a point where, when we do legislation on both sides of the ocean, on the European side and on the Washington side, we need to better, let's say, anticipate the consequences for the other side, to have an impact assessment. What does, for example, European legislation on carbon border adjustment mechanism, terrible word, but this complicated system, but it's a very important system, the CBAM, that we better need to anticipate what does it mean for our closest partner, the US, and vice versa. I call it a transatlantic reflex, that we think, okay, if we do legislation in that area, what does it mean for our closest partner? And I think that's the point where we, on both sides, need to get better to, yes, anticipate what an IRA or a CBAM or whatever, what does it mean for transatlantic trade, for transatlantic relations. If it harms them, then in the end, it plays only in the hands of Russians and Chinese. And here, I think clearly the understanding on both sides is there that we both need to get better on that topic.
When you look at the debate in Congress already, particularly from the Republicans now, saying there should be no blank check in the future for Ukraine assistance, then there is the issue of Taiwan. The US was already more looking towards Asia before Ukraine happened. So how can Germany ensure that it won't become flyover country for the United States as it turns more towards Asia once this war in Ukraine is settled, or at the very least frozen?
The US cannot and must not turn away their eyes from what is happening in the Pacific. So the consequence for us Europeans is that, whether we like it or not, it's unavoidable that the US will have to invest more attention. It's not a pivot, it's more attention to what is happening in China. And the natural consequence is we need to be able to share a larger part of the burden to provide for European security ourselves. That is, I think, also part of this Zeitenwende. And of course it would be, yes, it would be a really huge problem if indeed American support for Ukraine would disappear. We clearly I heard Trump's words and other Republicans' words regarding Ukraine at CPAC and at other instances. That is something very clearly where the Republicans have to make up their mind. If the US would give up on that support, very clearly Europe alone cannot do that. We need both sides of the Atlantic to support Ukraine in such a situation. But in the long run, after this has been settled, hopefully, very clearly. The Europeans need to be able to guarantee security on their continent with less, let's say, financial and military involvement of the US, not in terms of something which is going away, no, but very factual that the rise of China needs more attention from all of us, from the US, but also from Europeans.
Michael Link, Coordinator for Transatlantics for the German government, thank you so much.
Thank you.